The meeting of the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust for December 21st, 2010 will be in order. And the first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the December 7th meeting.
Move approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Are there questions or corrections, additions? Hearing none, voting please. Minutes are approved. Next item is the consent docket.
I'd move the consent docket subject to individual consideration.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent docket. Are there items to be discussed separately? Hearing none, voting please. Consent docket's approved. Next item is the easements, acceptance of easement and easement.
Move we accept the easement.
Have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second to accept the easement on South Pennsylvania at Banbury Lane. Are there comments, questions? Voting please. Easement accepted. Next item are the reports, a series of reports.
Will we receive the reports?
Second.
Motion and a second to receive the reports. Are there reports to be discussed?
A quick question, Mr. Chairman. In view of the continued drought, are we still comfortable with our water levels? And have we finished releasing all the water we're going to get out of Canton for Lake Hefner?
We have taken the release. Lake Hefner remains, I think, about 4.5 feet down, and it's been full most of the last year, so that's surprising for us right now. Generally, our lakes are in good shape with the exception of Lake Draper, but we have some updated news. We're very hopeful that the Draper pipeline, that the pipeline from Atoka's pump stations will restart in late January. We'll be going through a process that the manufacturer will be visiting 3 of the pump stations that still have work being done to install the pumps the first week in January. After that time, we believe they'll have adequate work to do to keep them busy and productive while they're here, and we think that it could be a couple more weeks. Pump stations will be able to restart. We'll be bringing water in from Lake Atoka. Lake Atoka today is down about 3 feet from its maximum. Again, drought conditions, and just to comment on the drought conditions as well, we are expecting continued relatively dry weather this winter. And so we've begun discussions with the Utility Customer Services superintendent about whether we'll need to select different dates for our winter period averaging for wastewater.
You mentioned you're anticipating the dry weather to continue. Does the Water Department subscribe to any private weather forecasting agency to help them make those determinations?
No, sir, we don't. We're relying on the Federal Drought Monitor.
When I was a director, we always used the Farmer's Almanac. So you've upgraded since then.
Enjoy the Farmer's Almanac.
That may be the reason you're no longer the director.
When you say January, that's earlier than we thought. Originally, I thought we were predicting that we wouldn't start to put water back in the Draper until February. So that we're going to a little bit ahead.
It might just be a couple of weeks, but we're very excited. And again, the contract is completing 6 to 9 months ahead of schedule.
You know, I see Draper regularly, and not being an engineer, not knowing how the cost would be, it seems like it is to some extent silted in over time. I mean, there appears to be a lot of dirt there. That is it just not practical that we take dozers and try to make it deeper and so it hold more water at this? I mean, that may be if it's a dumb question, you can tell me it's a dumb, but I'd still like to know the answer.
I need to go look at how much siltation we've had. We have a what's called a bathymetric map of the lake that tells us where it's a topographic map from the outside in.
Well, it may not be as much as I perceive it to be. I guess the lake has never been this low since it filled the first time.
That's correct.
So I'm seeing parts of the lake that I haven't seen
and I don't
in a long time.
I don't recall the history and what we've done to determine how much silt there is in that lake. I'll go figure that out.
It may not be a big deal, but I see a lot of it, and it looks like you could just take a dozer, and in a couple of hours you could push it and make the bucket bigger, but maybe that's not a big deal. Anyway, we have a motion and a second to receive the reports. Are there comments on other reports? Voting, please. Reports are received. Next item, item 6. First item, 6A, is the ratification of the Water Trust payments for November 9 through December 14.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to ratify the payments. Voting, please. Payments are ratified. Next item, item B, approve an RFQ for wastewater treatment plant operation.
Mr. Chairman, since we posted this agenda item, we have received a letter dated today from Veolia Water North America asking for an extension of 30 days to complete our negotiations and indicating a desire to get there. I am comfortable with whatever's legally appropriate with deferring it for a month, as Veolia suggests, if that's acceptable to Aquat. Of course, negotiating a new contract or seeking a new contract or going through that process requires a lot of time, both commitments from staff and potential contractors, but also it's a lengthy process.
When will the new contract be effective, Marcia?
The new Veolia's new contract is normally effective the 1st of January, but by practice, we have typically approved amendments and annual renewals sometime after the 1st of the year.
But the term is through December 31st.
Yeah.
So the contract we're going out on request for proposals take effect January 1, 2012?
Yes.
Are we do we normally issue contracts with automatic renewal periods, and then we go out for RFP again, or do we just go out for an RFP when we want to? We can renew the existing contract as many times as we want.
Yes. Historically, this contract has group year renewals. This piece of the contract, yes, Brett's going to help us with the details.
The original RFP process we used had an original 5-year term with 2 4-year renewals.
Okay.
We are on the second of the 4-year renewal negotiations. That would cause us to expire if we don't renew.
Right, but what we're discussing with them now is the second
option.
4-year renewal.
Yes, the price changes
That's
that
fine.
they
That's fine.
anticipate they need.
My only concern was that, it doesn't hurt periodically just to go out with RFPs to get information back to make sure markets haven't changed,
Right.
markedly. So, I'm fine.
Okay, I would move that we take I don't know what the day is, 4 weeks?
Well, January
5 weeks?
18th is a month.
Okay, yeah, do the second meeting in January.
January 18th.
Okay. Second.
Have a motion and a second to defer item 6B for until January the 18th. Voting, please. Items deferred. Is there any new business? Comments?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question. Yesterday, in newspapers and national press, the city of Norman got a lot of publicity about a problem with their water supply. Cadmium or chromium-6 or something like that.
Chromium-6.
As a potential or possible carcinogen. Is there a requirement that we measure for that, or do we measure for it just out of our interest of our own? And why would Norman's water supply be tainted and Oklahoma City's not be?
Thank you. Norman, like most utilities, Norman uses both groundwater wells and surface water treatment. So they have water from Lake Thunderbird and water from the Carver Wellington Aquifer. they are required to measure for chromium. It's not, chromium is an element, but it comes, of course, in different electron versions. The chromium-6 was, the hexavalent chromium, was a grave pollutant in California where its disposal was perhaps mishandled, where they saw very high concentrations of 500 parts per million. Norman's measurement is 13 parts per billion. It's like one's 13 and one's 500,000. If you get the relative numbers are dramatic. California is proposing new regulations, and again, they have this grievous history that's present in their minds that we don't necessarily share. So groundwater is more likely to have chromium, and therefore is being monitored in the state where there is the propensity for presence of chromium. We literally are not monitoring for it because it has not been an issue. We monitor for it in our wastewater treatment plants because we have metal finishers putting waste who are regulated by our industrial pretreatment program, for example. But otherwise, what we see in the wastewater in our bedroom community wastewater treatment plants, very low concentrations of chromium. We don't believe we start out with any. The Hefner plant's softening system, its water treatment process called softening, takes the chromium out of the water if it is present. And that's maybe a little more detail than you want. It's an interesting regulatory issue that's developing as frequently happens. Regulations are developed in a community to deal with an issue, and then they grow nationally, and EPA starts looking at them. We have very preliminary information, more about this being an issue in California than about what EPA has done about it so far across the country.
But Marsh, it's in the groundwater, it's not in the surface water?
It is in the groundwater only. That's what I know.
Is it more likely to occur in well water than it is in?
There are certain chemical constituents that are more likely to be present in surface water and others more likely to be present in groundwater. Typically, you'd be measuring for a couple of metallic elements in groundwater. You'd also be looking for radon, an isotope, and there are a couple of different radioactive isotopes that you look for in the ground because it's in the earth, and they get stripped out in the air so that when you've got a lake, when you've got the water in a lake, the constant air stripping takes some things out that are volatile, that the ground water coming from the pressure of the earth doesn't have that same opportunity. It's complexly different, and each aquifer is different. We don't have knowledge that there is a hexavalent chromium issue in our part of the country, truly.
But water from runoff is less likely to have high in chromium than water that's from a well.
Yes, sir. If you were, the exception would be a high pollutant area, a brownfield, an EPA cleanup site. Those would be things that you want to look at the runoff from, of course. There's a process that defines that and helps us do it.
Short answer, our citizens should not worry.
I apologize, there's no short answer, but that is correct. The citizens should not worry. We're okay.
Well, Marsh, if I were to speculate, a solution may be to shut down some of their groundwater. Their wells. That may be, I mean, they may have to take some of those wells out of service. And if that's the case, then they have options, and one option would be to either buy additional water from Oklahoma City or buy raw water from Oklahoma City and expand the treatment plant at Thunderbird. The problem with that is that their system is designed upon water being fed into their system on the west side of town from the wells and from the east side of town from Thunderbird. And if they shut those wells down, then all of a sudden they've got distribution problems within the city of Norman, which are not inexpensive to fix.
That's correct. Any change in your water supply system is complicated. I think other good news, while I keep belaboring the point, is that in our community, in the region, people share water. the city of Newcastle, which has a new contract with us for treated water, and Tuttle and Blanchard have been sharing water for years. They operate some of their own water treatment plants, for example, operate some wells, but everyone has a blend of supplies of water, which is very good for all of us for the long term. Makes you a little drought resistant in some ways, helps you when there's a price issue like this one.
Thank you.
Any further comments? We're adjourned. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you, Mr. Chairman.